Welcome guys to another episode with the Dune Hell, and here's another Google Doc video that we're going to be making. So I made a CPU and platform video recently, which was, it got mixed results on the views, but I liked making it so much that I decided I'll be making some specific videos about specific platforms that might be interesting. To start with, I think I'm going to talk about case number 3. So this was right in the corner, in the low end of the computers you could build, but I wanted to min-max to the true performance bargain king that that specific square of the 9-piece board allowed you to get, which was truly i7 9700KF overclocked on a Z170 board. That is really the min-max that you would be getting out of that. Like, obviously you could just buy a Z370 board with with any 9th gen CPU and then do a little bit of overclocking, and that would get you pretty far because they're pretty cheap. But if you wanted something a little cheaper, where you buy individual parts so that you can return them if they're broken. And then the other aspect is to get maxed out single core performance, and we're going to look at that in a sec here. This is the way I would do it. So the first step is to buy, I don't want to, well, you can kind of see the second step now, but the first step is to buy a very good Z170 board or Z270 board. And the one that I really like is the Z170 Xpower Gaming Titanium. Getting the Z270 version is going to be a little bit more expensive. Actually, it's almost double the price. But if you get the Z170 board, it's just the same VRMs. It's got the same overclocking features. Pretty much everything you'll see on an extreme board of kind of like that generation. It's got quad crossfire, which means PCIe Gen 3 X16 all around. I believe these will go in X8 if you fill up all the slots, but they are technically all X16s, which also means that if you're running like a Hyper M.2, you can definitely use up the X16 slot for its max performance, which is very nice. It's also got eSATA, which means that on here there's a SAS controller somewhere. And I believe there must be a way to convert this SAS into U.2. So that is a way that you can make use of the SATA, the extra SATA cables you might got at home. And otherwise on the back of the board, it's got a PS2 and a USB-C. Although the USB-C is just a Gen 2. There was no such thing as 2x2 at this time. But again, PS2, which is incredible for the gamers that actually know how to use PS2 and understand like the latency advantages with that. I personally have a PS2 keyboard, and they're amazing. I mean, $20 for a true what do you call that, MX Cherry MX red keyboard. So that's quite incredible. And yeah, obviously you get the buttons and all that kind of stuff as well. So for this kind of board, you're only paying $140 because they're considered old now, and you're getting first gen DDR4, which is totally acceptable because again, you're putting in a 9th gen chip, so you'll be able to really max out that performance, and we're going to see that in a sec here. But another thing is that you do get M.2 on the board, which is something that you wouldn't get on a another Z170 board. A lot of the Z170s kind of like didn't really embrace M.2 just yet. Some of them still were on eSATA. Others had also U.2, which is pretty crazy on the board. And that has some advantages, but it's very niche. The next thing is to buy yourself a nice pair of 2x8 gigabytes of Patriot Viper steel. Now this is a 3600 C18 kit, I believe. But the reason why you would go with Patriot Viper is that this is guaranteed B die. You can get binned B die for a little bit more, it'd be $100, and that will get you 4400 megahertz, which is like very comparable to like modern day 12th, 13th, 14th gen DDR5. But for the price of performance, this is incredible. I mean, $70, and this will get you 4200 megahertz, probably no problem. So I would seriously consider this. Now, why wouldn't you go with like 2x16? Well, the truth is that 2x16 has limited advantages for gaming. I mean, this is a gaming build. There's not really a point of going with 2x16 if you're just doing gaming. Now, obviously, if you are doing bigger tasks, that'll be a completely different story. You might even not want to go with a Z170, this Z170 board. But again, if it's just gaming, 2x8 is absolutely acceptable. Even Warzone 2.0 will not use more than this amount of RAM. Just don't run anything in the background. And then finally is the CPU. Now this is the thing that probably costs the most, and in this build is kind of weird how it costs this much. You'd be getting a 9700KF. This one is coming straight from China, so that way there's probably a lot for everyone that wants to use them. And it is the most expensive. It's about 240 to 270. I've never seen it under 200, but right now it's 240 to 270 bucks, which is quite expensive for what it is. But again, the board and the RAM more than makes up for it in terms of the price. So if we just look at the price real quick, it's a 140 plus 72 plus 272. It's about 500 bucks all in all. And what you're getting out of this is, again, one of the better boards out of the platform, the 1151 platform. You're getting very good RAM, maxed out RAM, basically competing with DDR5, and you're getting a CPU that it should not need an introduction. It's very what do you call that? The word is under. Well, I forget the word. Anyhow, this CPU is extremely good at what it does. If we look at some benchmarks here, stock, it's doing 212 in Cinebench R15, which is, a little better than Ryzen 2000, and it competes directly with Ryzen 5000 in terms of raw Cinebench R15. Obviously not with the X3D, but if you look at it against like a modern day chip such as the 11th gen, it's right around the same amount of single core on R15. And the reason why we're looking at R15 is actually a lot of games that you're probably going to play with this is going to be DirectX 11, which R15 is absolutely fine for that. R20 and R23 are using a lot more cache, and they're playing a lot more with the AVX2 dataset, which is something that modern CPUs are just way better at using. But for most gaming, you're really not going to need that, and that's where the benefit is. So on top of not paying tax, on top of paying basically free shipping if you're in the US and a little bit of shipping if you're in Canada, you're basically getting a $500 platform that will allow you to compete with modern day 12th gen, 13th gen, no problem. If we're looking at overclocking, which is really where this thing gets really juicy, 5.2 gigahertz, some are pushing at 5.4 gigahertz, we're talking 235, 237 points on the single thread, which means you're pushing past 11th gen just a little bit. So between this and a boosted 11th gen, this will beat it. And so when we're talking about gaming performance, most games are going to really utilize this. And again, why is it that we're going with a 9700K, not a 9900K? The simple reason is that the 9900K is quite a bit more expensive for what comes down to cache. Now, a lot of people believe they have this kind of like misconception that more cores, more threads, better for gaming. That's actually not true. More cores is better for gaming, but actually disabling threads will actually perform better in gaming. Running less RAM slots, so long as you're running dual channel, is going to be better for gaming as well. So 2x 8 gigabytes is a lot easier on the 9th gen than if you ran 2x 16 or if you ran 4x 8. That would also tax on the RAM, which would be a little worse for your overclock. Now we're not talking about a lot, but when we're talking about gaming and we're trying to max out that gaming performance, 100 megahertz might make a little bit of a difference. Now some tips when you're overclocking this thing, and here I wrote engineering sample, but it might not be an engineering sample. It might just be a regular, like this one. And another thing, the reason why we're running a KF instead of just a K is that actually disabling the iGPU, the internal GPU, will actually gain you a couple megahertz as well. So that's another factor that might push you past 5.2 gigahertz, which is really cool. So again, not an engineering sample, and what I was going to say is there's a couple of things you could do to guarantee you pushing that 5.1, 5.2 gigahertz very easily. Because of course, when you're running these overclocks, there is some silicon lottery that happens where basically the quality of each print of the silicon might depend on what you're actually going to get in the end. And if we look here, there's two things you could do to really gain that performance. The first one is die lapping. And this is basically when you're taking your CPU metal right here, which is actually a shield. This thing is a shield. It's not really doing anything other than shielding your CPU. And under this, you have a little bit of thermal paste. Now, because this thermal paste is kind of cheap, and this metal, the shield, is not exactly equal on all of its sides, die lapping is basically a process which takes out any shielding that is unequal on the surface, which helps a lot with getting that thermal resistance, which means you can get better overclocks very easily. So if we look here, he basically put his CPU on sanding paper and some, I believe it's some sort of grease, and you basically just rub on it for a little while. Here it gives you a full guide to explain how that works. And then once he was done, he was able to get some much better cooling on his CPU. So die lapping is the first thing you can do. It's a cheap thing. You just need the sandpaper and a little bit of that liquid. I think, again, I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I believe it's just cheap paper. Oh, it's water actually in this case. Interesting. And that's how you can get that done. The second thing you could do, which is a little bit riskier but very, very beneficial if you're looking for that liquid cooling overclocking, which is actually relatively cheap if you're willing to invest in some equipment. Other than the radiators, it can actually get really cheap to run some liquid cooling, especially if you have if you're trying to like invest for later. Like if you say, like in a couple years you're done with this platform, you want to go to something bigger. You can always keep using your liquid cooling setup. So liquid cooling could be an interesting investment if you're a gamer. But if you are doing that, then I would suggest also doing heatsink, IHS heatsink removal delid kit. So this will actually take off the shield off your CPU, and then you will be able to actually have either direct die, which means you're going to have your liquid cooling block directly on your CPU, or you can run liquid metal inside your CPU and then run the shield on the die lapped shield onto your CPU, and that will definitely pass you from 5.3 gigahertz. Actually, I know a guy, he ran on his Z170 board, he was running his 7700K at 5.4 gigahertz, and he was doing it very in a very stable manner for over 5-6 years. He also ran 3 R9 Fury X's, which is amazing. But again, if you are interested in running something maxed out, these things are definitely in your cards. And then running a liquid cooled setup will definitely push you to modern day big boy overclocking, and so on. Now, finally, the only thing I forgot to mention is Z170 boards on 9th gen. So there is a tutorial to do this. All you really need is electrical tape, steady hands, and you will also need like a steady paper cutter. So something that you could cut paper. Scissors are fine, but something that's very accurate, because you're gonna have to make some very small cuts, like 1 millimeter cuts for gluing it on the back of this chip, and that's how you're going to be able to run it on this board. So it's not risky, because if it does, if you do put it on the wrong place, it's just not going to boot up. You just have to, reset. And you could do it a million times on this board. This board is 100% indestructible. It's a very good board for this kind of stuff. And once it does boot, everything will work as if you were running, Z390, no problem. And there it is. So that's pretty much it for the tutorial. And the build, you're going up. It's a $480 build, so you're kind of in the i5 12th gen range, but obviously you don't get the nice board and you don't get some nice RAM in that combination. So you would be getting more FPS in this specific scenario. Obviously there's no real upgrade path going with this, but again, you're running like modern day IPC, which means you can run pretty much any graphics card you want on this board, and it's not going to make any difference. Obviously I don't have to really talk about Gen 3 X16. I mean, modern day GPUs, they can't even run Gen 4 quite well. So Gen 3 X16 is plenty for most GPUs, unless you're running maybe like an RTX 4090. I've heard that has like slight disadvantages. But again, this is more of a budget, and if you're on a budget, I would suggest doing this. So if you did try to max this out, if you put this with like an RX 6800 XT or even a 6900 XT, so that'd be like an RTX 3090, that will put you back another $650. So we're talking about $1,100, and you got yourself an amazing gaming PC. It's a very good deal. Obviously, if case, liquid cooler, power supply, 1600 in the end. But again, it's an amazing build for the money. It will really benefit you as a gamer, and in 2023, this is what I would suggest for everyone. If you do want to run something bigger, hotter, whatever, do check out my CPU platform list. It's going to teach you a lot about what's going on in the background and how you can actually save a lot of money and still be a competent gamer. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a good day.